This is the M1 Max MacBook Pro. It's the top of the line Apple has to offer for the MacBook Pro series. And I think this year's MacBook Pro is revolutionary and truly worthy of being called Pro. Over the years, a worthy upgrade has never made sense with the MacBook Pro lineup. Not until this year's MacBook Pro came out, and this is what we've been waiting for years. It's stunning how Apple made a laptop that has better battery but not sacrificing any performance. So for this video, I have divided it into 5 parts. What's new? User experience, video editing perspective, which MacBook Pro should you buy, and is it worth upgrading from the previous MacBook Pro? So if you're in a rush, you can just skip it whichever part you like. You can just check it out below. So first, let's talk about what's new. The first notable upgrade for this year's MacBook Pro is the Apple Silicon chip, in which they have released 2 insane chips, which are the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. I went with the M1 Max as it's faster and more in line with my daily usage, which is content creation. But we'll talk about this later on which chip you should get. And for the screen, if you're familiar with the XDR display that Apple released with the Mac Pro, they have used the same quality for this year's MacBook Pro. And if you're like me who likes to pixel peek, it's really crisp, brighter, more natural, and a much better experience when you're using it. And they call it the Liquid XDR display. And with better display comes with better refresh rate. And I'm happy to tell you that this year's MacBook Pro has Pro Motion. This laptop supports up to 120 Hz. And finally, they brought back the much needed ports, especially the SD card slot, as this is really crucial for creatives like me. And since we're on the topic of comeback, the MagSafe has been revived. And it also has better keyboard that I really love using. And for the touch bar, it has been removed, which is great because for me, I still prefer the actual buttons. And Apple claims that the battery life is way better. And you can use this without plugging in and it won't sacrifice any performance. And it's way ahead of the competition based on the charts that Apple provided. This is unheard, which makes it more amazing. And of course, the notch. It has mixed opinions on it. I know at first you're really gonna notice it, but for me, I hardly even notice it now that I've been using it for a while, since it blends well on the top bar. And because of the notch, we have smaller bezels, and I'll take that every single day. And for me, that notch has potential. They might add the Face ID in the future. So, we'll see. To be honest, there's a lot more new about this MacBook Pro, such as better camera quality, faster write-up speeds, and a lot more. But the things that I touch upon are what consumers are looking for when finding a laptop that they want to buy. So if you're interested in specs, you can just check it out on Apple's website. Now, let's proceed to user experience. I've been using this for a while and I can say that it's been keeping up with what I'm doing. And I'm not a casual user. I use this laptop for heavy usage with apps such as Adobe Premiere, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, searching on Safari, Media Encoder, QuickTime, and other productivity apps. And it can run all at the same time, in which my Intel MacBook Pro can't even manage. And now let's talk about video editing perspective. For this part, I know most videos out there talk about render speeds. But for me, what's more important is better editing workflow. Can it handle Adobe Premiere, which is the software that I'm using? To be honest, I would go with smoother experience when editing rather than faster render times. And for my experience, it can do both. Video editing was smoother than before, and it renders way faster than my Intel MacBook Pro. Granted, of course, Premiere Pro does crash and drop frames, and I think this is more of an issue with the software than the hardware. And for my video editing experience coming from the Intel MacBook Pro, the M1 Max blows it out the table. There is no comparison on how much faster the M1 Max is. And if you're also a creative like me, I highly suggest to upgrade to the M1 Max. And if you're into more in-depth about render times on other softwares, you could check out Max Tech videos, and I'll link it up in the description box below. So now the question is, which MacBook Pro should I buy? First, let's talk about size. If you're into traveling and portability, then go with the 14-inch. But if you need that extra screen estate, especially for creatives, I would personally go with the 16-inch. And for the chip, M1 Pro or M1 Max? For this, it really depends on your budget. Both are more capable in doing most of the heavy creative apps that you throw into it. You couldn't really go wrong with the both of it. But personally, I went with the M1 Max since I know that I can utilize its full potential, and I know it's really expensive, but this is an investment and I know I can get my money back. So also take that into consideration in choosing which you like. And finally, is it worth upgrading from the previous MacBook Pro? Yes. And if you're thinking about upgrading your MacBook Pro, this is the best time for it. It's about time for all the future updates will be focused on the MacBook Pro or the MacBooks which has the Apple Silicon chip, and Intel will soon be phased out from Apple. So if you have the budget, I highly recommend you to upgrade as you can really see an improvement in any way possible. The M1 Max MacBook Pro has made a huge impact on the laptop scene, and I can say that it's just getting started. And I'm excited for what's next for Apple. And that is why I said the M1 Max MacBook Pro is revolutionary. And that's it. Hit like if you made it until the end of this video, and comment down below which MacBook Pro are you getting, and if you're not getting one, which laptop are you using right now. And I hope you like this project as I put a lot of effort into it. And don't forget to subscribe for more contents like this. And as always, see you on the next vlog.